Gertrude Braithwaite's real family, Gavin, was abducted by aliens, and the night folk worshipped the Bullgator. Those are just to name a few of the 10 wildest fan theories circulating around the Red Dead Redemption 2 community that we'll be exploring today. As always, if you enjoy the following, you all know what to do, and without further delay, let's get straight into the video. Gavin was abducted by aliens. Theory. Whilst roaming around the landscapes and towns of the Wild West, players will have no doubt encountered Nigel, a befuddled Englishman who's frantically searching for his lost friend, Gavin. Nigel could be encountered numerous times throughout this title, even travelling further south during the epilogue. There are many speculations and theories as to the missing friend, but one theory is that Gavin was actually abducted by aliens. Proof. Evidence to the theory can be found at Handy's Bethel, where the player can discover the remains of the mass self-killing of a religious cult, along with a note described as the mysterious sermon, which foreshadows an alien encounter that can in fact be triggered around 2 AM. But how did players tie Gavin to this? Across the floor are broken wooden planks that, if you inspect a little more closely, actually spell out Gavin's name. Is this what really happened to Nigel's friend, and that's why he's nowhere to be found in the entire game of Red Dead Redemption 2? The sun worshipper died after the first interaction. Theory. In the southern regions of New Austin during the epilogue, John Marston can beat an NPC who's come to be known as the sun worshipper, whose actual name is Bob Brownlee. Bob Brownlee doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep, and he doesn't drink water. He claims that all he needs to survive in this world is the energy provided to him by the sun in which he worships. Bob Brownlee can be encountered a total of 12 times, each with a minimum of 3 in-game days in between, leading players to believe that he actually died following the first interaction. Proof. The Rule of 3. The Rule of 3 dictates that the human body can survive 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So if Bob Brownlee truly isn't consuming any water, there's no way he could have been around for a total of 12 encounters, which would be at a minimum 36 days. This prompts the idea that after the first interaction near McFarlane's ranch, the following 11 encounters were just a figment of John's imagination. There was no rat in the Vandalin gang. Theory. The Pinkerton Detective Agency, alongside local law enforcement, are hot on the heels of the Vandalin gang, and have been since the infamous Blackwater ferry heist. As they travel across all 5 states of Red Dead Redemption 2, the agents always seem to catch up with them eventually. As we draw a close on the primary story of the title, Agent Milton openly admits to Arthur that Michael Bell was the one who sold the gang out, but some players believed his confession was falsified, and there was in fact no betrayer whatsoever. Proof. The gang, wherever they have most recently settled and set up camp, can't seem to stay hidden in the shadows for very long. They always seem to make too much noise, eventually drawing the authorities towards them. The Blackwater ferry heist, the shootout in Valentine, and the bank heist in Saint-Denis are but to name a few. Even at one point, right before the assassination of Leviticus Cornwall, when Micah claims there has to be a betrayer in the mix, Arthur debunks this theory, stating that the whole gang just got sloppier than a town drunk, and that's why the Pinkertons would always locate them so easily. The theory also goes on to claim that Milton's falsified confession was solely to cause friction between the members of the Vandalin's gang, in hopes that they would pick one another off. The night folk worship the Bullgator. Theory. The bayou is a very dangerous place when it comes to, in particular, a reptilian aspect. Citizens are often very wary of travelling through these swamps and woodlands in the region for fear of the many alligators that inhabit the lands, especially with the circulating rumours of the legendary Bullgator who preys within the waters. Nobody is safe from the reptiles, except seemingly one particular faction, the night folk. Players have come to theorise that the terrifying night folk actually worship the reptiles and believe that the legendary Bullgator to be a godlike creature. Proof. Gamers drew this conclusion from the night folk being able to wander freely throughout the swamps of the bayou and are never seen to be attacked by the alligators, with some even speculating that many of the travellers that are kidnapped by the crazies are even fed to the legendary Bullgator as an offering, in turn granting the group safe passage through the very dangerous territory. Abigail faked her pregnancy. Theory. Although a bit morbid, some players have come to theorise that Abigail Roberts actually faked the pregnancy of her and John Marston's daughter. The time gap between 1899 and 1907 leaves so many unanswered questions, making the 8-year difference almost a blank void. It's believed to be within a stretch of almost a decade that's when Abigail would claim to become pregnant. Proof: we have very little information on the child, and only may potentially believe her name to be Rachel, as that's what John would name his steed in the epilogue, possibly in her memory, but other than that, there's not much else to go on. During the epilogue, there's no mention of the child whatsoever, and she's only brought up in conversation in the first Red Dead Redemption during a talk between John Marston and newfound friend Bonnie McFarlane. I think he mentions her somewhere later in the story during his time in Mexico, but I can't remember for certainty. Throughout our time in 1907, Abigail is constantly criticising John for his actions as she attempts to pull him away from his previous life as an outlaw, leading to some speculating that she may have in fact faked the pregnancy, then later a miscarriage, to try and convince John to live a more homely life together as a family. There's more detail to discuss with this, so if you'd like to see a breakdown of this theory or any other theories in today's video, be sure to let me know in the comment section. Valentine is under a curse. Theory: NPCs of Valentine can often be seen discussing an apparent curse that's been placed upon their town. This stems from whispers and mumblings, as well as gossip from people with probably too much time on their hands. Even after visiting the town early on in the game, Valentine gang members Mary Beth and Karen can be seen discussing the rumours, with Karen giving the details of what she heard from a lady in town. Proof: before Valentine became what it was in 1899, it was originally home to a tribe of native Indians. During a siege from the military, backed by the government who wanted this land for themselves, the area was surrounded and the locals were massacred, with those surviving being forced to flee their home. This was following constant disagreements between the native Indians and the government officials concerning on who the land truly belonged to. It is believed that it was the surviving victims of this act who placed the town under a curse as revenge. The curse is believed to still be in place in the town, as there was a mural depicting the massacre painted on an animal hide before it was torn apart and scattered throughout the town, keeping the curse alive to this day. Dutch Vanderland turned cannibal. Theory: as the gang broke down over time before finally separating in 1899, Dutch some years later, in 1911, had now formed an entirely new posse of outlaws known to locals as Dutch's Boys. The new gang lives in the mountains of Tall Trees, or more specifically, an area known as Cochinay. Some believe that Dutch Vanderland, during his many years of mental decline, finally broke and resorted to cannibalism for survival. Proof: Dutch mentions throughout RDR2 how in order to survive, the gang must adapt to their surroundings. This could be construed in a manner of ways, not just cannibalism, but in Cochinay there's evidence supporting this theory. Those who explore the camp's surroundings will notice the many bones which appear to be human. Aside from the obvious human skulls, there are many femurs that certainly look like it could be human too. A form of the psychosis caused by cannibalism is known as the Wendigo theory. The Wendigo psychosis is believed to create a psychological buffer that shields the individuals from the full weight of their actions, not only offering a means of emotional survival, but also context for their behaviour, often with the individuals isolating themselves from the rest of the world, just as Dutch Vanderland did. There's an excellent video out there covering this theory by Fishy, which I'll leave as the end screen to this one and provide the link in the video description below, which is something I highly recommend you take the time to watch. Gertrude Braithwaite's real family. Theory: the Braithwaite family secret isn't kept too secret for players who explore the grounds behind the family's manor. At this outhouse, either Arthur or John can find a troubled young lady by the name of Gertrude Braithwaite. She's kept away from the eyes of the locals for fear of embarrassment of the Braithwaites, who care more for their reputation than family. Even though Gertrude bears the Braithwaite name, some believe that she was conceived by another. Proof: Gertrude has a connection with the isolated village of Butcher's Creek, all the way across the other side of the map in an entirely different state. The connection? The numbers Gertrude spouts over and over. Heading to Butcher's Creek, if you look at the outhouses in the village, you'll notice that they are individually numbered, and when pinpointed on the map, form the shape of a pentagram. Further adding to this is the glowing pentagram that's visible under one of the shacks at 4 AM. Gertrude also has physical deformities very similar to that of the locals of Butcher's Creek and the Murphy brood, leading to some gamers believing that these people are in fact Gertrude's real family, and that's why she can't seem to disconnect herself from the area. The only question is, how did she end up in the arms of the Braithwaite family? Cleet and Joe were brought in to befall the gang. Theory: as we draw to a close in Arthur's story during the final chapter of the main game, former associates of Micah Bell, Cleet and Joe are brought into the mix. As lore would tell, it was Micah who brought the duo in to assist in the final train heist as hired guns, but some speculate that the pair's arrival was much more than this, and that they were actually implemented into the Valentine gang, working undercover for the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Proof: the gang are in their final days, and everyone knows it. Agent Milton of the Pinkertons has tried just about everything to infiltrate the gang. They've tried turning Arthur, Molly, and Lord knows whoever else, but one thing that they hadn't tried up until this point was, instead of trying to recruit people from the gang, is to place people into the gang. Cleet and Joe were of course previous associates of Micah Bell, as the trio ran their own gang years before alongside a fourth gentleman called Norman, and by this time in the narrative, Micah is already working as an informant for the Pinkertons, so it would be quite a coincidence that Micah brought Cleet and Joe into the fold as extra guns, when there was already enough armed individuals to take on the train. It's for this reason that some players believe that alongside Micah, Cleet and Joe were also working undercover for the Pinkerton Detective Agency, to throw a spanner in the works concerning the Van der Lin's gang. The Strange Man was a figment of John's imagination. Theory: similar to the Sun Worshipper, there's a theory circulating that the Strange Man, featured predominantly in Red Dead Redemption 1 and somewhat in RDR2, isn't actually a god, the devil, or even any form of a ghostly apparition. It's nothing more than a troubled mind of John Marston playing tricks on him. Proof: the Strange Man knows a lot about John's past. He's aware of the killing of Heidi McCourt during the Blackwater ferry heist to which John was involved. He also follows him around the map, such as during his visit to Mexico in their second encounter, then lastly at the Marston home of Beecher's Hope, where he claims that John's final resting place is, and quote, a fine spot. Throughout their encounters, the Strange Man tasks John with moral dilemmas, either be honourable or dishonourable. The theory goes that in reality, John had already experienced these dilemmas and began to visualise the Strange Man following these events in an attempt to make sense of his choices. The Strange Man was of course not real, as shown by the 3 bullets that passed through him in their final encounter, leading players to speculate that he was never there to begin with, and that John simply began to imagine the character due to the traumatic things he'd experienced throughout his life, speculating that because he was no longer with the Van der Lin's gang, where he was used to following orders, he had now created the fictional Strange Man character in his mind to guide him along in life. I agree, some of these fan theories could be perceived as far-fetched, but hopefully it gave you all food for thought, and more importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you all know what to do, and if you're new here and aren't subscribed to the channel already, please consider doing so. If you guys wish to see a second installment of the wildest fan theories of Red Dead Redemption 2 that could potentially be true, be sure to let me know in the comment section, or even if you wish to see an in-depth video on any of the topics discussed today. What are some of the theories you've seen floating about, or do you have some of your own? Be sure to share them too, on top of your thoughts to the ones discussed today. Thank you all for watching. You've been listening to Phil of Filbee Gaming, and I'll see you all in the next video.